Chapter 63, Brainwashing. Ling Tian excitedly bounced out of his grandmother's room, his mind still reeling in admiration regarding his grandmother's eloquence. This sort of standard was miles above his own. The only matter which old Madame Ling did not interfere was the problem of the violent wind gang. After all, the Ling family was a behemoth, and it did not look good for them to deal with such a petty gang. Thus, old Madame Ling left it entirely to Ling Tian and disallowed him to make a personal appearance. This sort of decision made Ling Tian downcast. He originally thought that he would not require effort on his part to take care of the violent wind gang. However, all could wait till the Blood Iron Warriors arrived. Ling Tian would put them through a bit of training before deploying them. One of their objectives would be the taking over of the violent wind gang. The fourth day, Ling Tian was all smiles as he stood at his doorstep, gazing at the neat and orderly 3 rows of 36 Blood Iron Warriors. He had long ago given the order that no one was to even intrude half a step into his courtyard today. All the warriors were uniformly well built, carrying an aura of coldness. Standing there, once could as though feel like they were facing an onslaught in a snow-covered forest. All of them were expressionless, with the pupils of their eyes not even moving. Only Feng Mo, who was standing at the front, revealed a helpless expression, with the corners of his mouth curled up in a bitter smile. The Blood Iron Warriors did not put that elegant young noble standing in front of them in their eyes at all. All of them had already heard from Feng Mo's mouth how it was this child's mischief that had gotten all of them here right now. As soldiers, what they looked forward most was the blood-soaked battlefields, where they could prove themselves. Even recalling such scenes caused their blood to boil with excitement. However, just because of this little fellow, all of them came to this paradise of a place. This caused them to be at a loss and resent Ling Tian for this orders. From everyone's eyes, I can see that you do not appreciate your current situation, and resent me for calling you over, cutting off your futures. That's right, you coming here was my idea. Sweeping his gaze through all of them once, Ling Tian then began with this statement. His bluntness achieved the result he wanted. Upon hearing that it was Ling Tian's idea that got them removed from the military records, all the Blood Iron Warriors simultaneously emitted chilling rays from their eyes as they stared at him. Ling Tian remained unmoved, quietly standing at the same spot, ignoring their cold stares. Behind him stood both Ling Jian and Ling Chen. Ling Jian remained impassive like a statue, but Ling Chen was a little unable to take the stares of the Blood Iron Warriors and turned a little pale. Ling Tian slowly took a step forward. In the eyes of the Blood Iron Warriors, it suddenly felt as though a towering mountain was pressing down upon them, as though it could blot out the skies and earth. All of them could not help but subconsciously shift backwards, and some even took a step back in response. All the warriors took in a breath of cold air at this situation. Even a great general would choose to blend into the aura under such a circumstance and not try to fight back forcefully. The 36 of them were elite warriors. How could the killing intent exuded by them be endured by a normal person? However, this little guy in front of them actually used his own aura to overpower all 36 of theirs. For that short moment, everyone felt stifled under that pressure. Everyone could only stare on in shock. This little kid was akin to a monster. Unknowingly, the Blood Iron Warriors begun to retract their thoughts of disdain. Ling Tian nodded his head in satisfaction, before saying, "Everyone here is unhappy, this I am aware. However, did you think that the military camp is a place where you can easily earn merits? Let me ask you all, how long have you been in the military?" The crowd looked at each other. Finally, a stocky and tall youth opened his mouth to speak. This little one entered the army at age 14, now I'm 21, I've been inside the military for a whole 7 years. Ling Tian grunted in acknowledgement, then continued, "Position?" That youth lowered his head in embarrassment, saying, "I was originally a section leader, now a guard for the marshal." With a sneer, Ling Tian said, "With your qualifications, To rise to the position of general, or deputy general, how long more will you need? The youth's face flushed with indignation, shouting, "This little one isn't he born with a silver spoon? If I want to rise to general, I am afraid I will never live to see it." Hearing so, Ling Tian nodded in understanding. "Since you can't reach the position of general, then what can you do by staying in the army? What will be your ending?" The youth was sluggish in his reply, "I don't know." With a snort, Ling Tian said, "If you don't, then let me tell you. At 21, you can at most stay for another 24 years in the army. Although you cannot rise to the position of general, once there is a war, you need to go out to the battlefield to fight. You tell me, how many times can you maintain this sort of killing lifestyle?" The youth was stunned silent. After all, no one was a god, so how could they know if they would end up perishing in the next battle? He took a deep breath, before puffing up his chest and saying, "Death is nothing." Ha 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 ha. Ling Tian let out a bout of crazed laughter. "In this life without a chance of promotion, you sure face death quite happily." Ignoring him, he turned to the others, "What about you? Your duration in the army?" After a precedent, all of them started to speak. 6 years. This little one has been inside for 11 years. This little one, 9 years. Ling Tian suddenly raised his hands and stopped the deluge of voices. He asked, "Who are you enlisting for? Who are you fighting so hard for? For whom do you enlist? For whom do you go to war?" These two questions were just like two immensely huge cudgels, hammering heavily upon the hearts of all present. For a moment, nobody could come out with an answer. After a long while, one of the blood iron warriors stammered, "This little one entered the army to fill his stomach. The army also provides pay and can be used to help my family." This reason was simply and yet amusing. Yet when he spoke, most if not all of them nodded in acknowledgement, empathizing with him. Ling Tian laughed in his heart. Indeed, he did not guess wrongly. This age was far from the time where the soldiers would undergo brainwashing to make them loyal. Thus he said, "Are all of you the same?" The remaining crowd nodded their heads, looking at each other. Ling Tian now coldly smiled, "Based on what you were saying, I can conclude that your enlistment was for your own survival and to allow your family to lead better lives. Is that right?" The crowd could hear the sneering and disdain in his words, but how could they disagree? Everyone present could only solemnly nod their heads. Useless. No resolve. This sentence of Ling Tian ignited the fury of all present. Chapter 64, Convincing. A blood iron warrior then took a step forward and said with a chilly tone, "Young noble Ling, since we are already at your mansion, we will listen to your commands and obey your orders. But young noble Ling should respect yourself and not humiliate us." Ling Tian then burst out into laughter as he said with sarcasm, "Humiliate you guys? All of you are just some ruffians without any aspirations. At the very most, you have been on the battlefield a little more than others. If not for me bringing you guys over, it is only a matter of time before you become a corpse on the battlefield. With regards to a future corpse, I really don't have any interest to humiliate you." "You!" The eyes of the 36 blood iron warriors turned red from anger. They were all heroes who had been in and out of countless battlefields, at least, that's what they thought. In the entire army, who wouldn't hold them in high regard? But today, they were suffering from the humiliation of a young boy. How will they be able to rein in their anger? In that instant, the anger rushed to their heads. "Young noble Ling, you are only the son of General Ling. The only thing noble about you is your status. What rights do you have to humiliate us like that?" "What rights?" Ha ha ha. Ling Tian then walked forward to a green stone table, with this. As he said that, he raised his feet, kicking the stone table which was over 100 kgs heavy up into the air. Following which, he jumped up and thrust out his right fist, launching a horrifying punch in the air, striking the center of the table. Bang! With a single fist, the stone table exploded on the spot, breaking into pieces and crashing on the floor. Ling Tian then landed as he slapped his hands elegantly, without a single trace of injury on his hands. He then said calmly, "I know that you soldiers only respect the strong. I wonder if this display of mine gives me the rights to teach you a lesson." As the Blood Iron warriors saw the stone fragments, their mouths were ajar for a long while. They could not help but rub their eyes, as though they were in a dream. Ling Tian and Ling Tian by the side were also shocked. The both of them then looked towards Ling Tian with a face full of worship and passion. All of the Blood Iron warriors also looked towards Ling Tian with deep respects in their eyes. With such strength, they may not even have the rights to be humiliated by Ling Tian. Ling Tian then giggled, "I originally thought of transferring you guys over to groom you guys into an expert capable of fighting 100 people in the battlefield." As he said that, the eyes of the 36 Blood Iron warriors was filled with a burning passion. The army is a place where they would worship strength. The strength which Ling Tian displayed had already swept all the arrogance in their hearts away, turning it into respect and worship. As they heard that Ling Tian was willing to teach them, they could not help but grow excited. They all straightened their backs and stared at Ling Tian with a pair of excited eyes. "However, I never thought that all of you were just characters without ambition." Ling Tian then changed the topic and continued to insult them. But now, they no longer found it to be ear-piercing but felt anxious instead. There is such a great chance in front of them right now. If they are able to grasp this opportunity, it would be only a matter of time before they attain the strength which they could only dream about. But the young noble words seemed to indicate that he was not satisfied with them. They could not help but grow anxious as they stared at Ling Tian, waiting for him to continue. "Haze. Forget it, since all of your hearts are not here, it is useless for me to force you guys. I will tell my father tomorrow to return you guys to wherever you came from." Ling Tian then pretended to sigh. Now that they saw such strength, how would they be willing to go anywhere else? Even though they knew that Ling Tian only said that on purpose, no one present could withstand such an allure. Furthermore, Feng Mo and Gang knew that if they did not have any objection, what Ling Tian said would become reality. Ling Tian would chase them out without hesitation at all. After seeing how decisive Ling Tian was, Feng Mo would not doubt this guess of his. Stepping forward, Feng Mo knelt down and cupped his fists. "Feng Mo is willing to give my all to serve young noble. As long as I am alive, I swear to be loyal to young noble. May young noble retract your command." After he finished, he kowtowed and did not get up. All of the other Blood Iron warriors also knelt down. "We are willing to serve the young noble, we swear our loyalty to the young noble. Please accept us all." Go back? Where can they go back to? They were already removed from the army, how would they be able to return? As long as they step out from this place, they would probably end up becoming street hooligans. They all understood that after being sent to the Ling family with their ranks stripped, it would mean that they are now the henchmen of the Ling family. While it sounds better to call them henchmen, they were no different from slaves. If they were to pledge their loyalty to this young noble in front of them, not only will they be able to learn the martial arts which they dreamed of, this young noble will be the future family head of the Ling family. Being the personal guards of the young noble, their status will also rise greatly in the future for sure. If they were not going to follow such a master, who else will they follow? Ling Tian then said coldly, "Very good, since you guys are willing to stay, let me make some things clear first. The Ling family, especially being under me, is not a place where you can stay just because you want to. I will first administer a test to all of you. Only after going through the test would you have the rights to stay by my side. If you fail it, I will ask my father to send you guys elsewhere. Remember, I only want real men here. I don't need trash." Everyone felt their blood boil in excitement as they agreed in unison. They all thought to themselves, if we are not even able to pass young noble's test of your physical fitness, We will not even have the face to stay behind." Ling Tian then continued, "Besides that, there are two conditions for being under me. First, you cannot reveal to anyone any information about me. Second, you have to obey my commands no matter what. If you can't do that, you may leave." Everyone then stared at each other as they thought, these are considered conditions? Since we are here as your subordinates, of course we will not reveal any of your information. Of course we would follow your orders. Are these things which must be said? A blood iron warrior then asked, "Young noble, what is master or madam asks?" Ling Tian then looked towards him with praise in his heart as he nodded his head. However, his face was filled with anger. "Are you deaf? I said anyone. Anything. Do you understand?" "I understand." Everyone's voice thundered in unison. Ling Tian nodded his head, "I will give all of you a day to rest. The test will start tomorrow at the break of dawn. I can tell you something, as long as you pass the test, you will become a killing machine on the battlefield. A real blood iron warrior, a real expert capable of fighting 100 people. Things like smashing bricks and killing the general in a battle will be nothing but child's play. Before the sun rises tomorrow, gather in front of the mansion. Ling Tian, that includes you." All of the blood iron warriors could not conceal the excitement in their hearts as they acknowledged heartily. Chapter 65, Such Rewards. The 36 blood iron warriors completely understood what Ling Tian meant by a test. It was just so torturous. At this moment, they all no longer had the energy to even complain already. As they gathered in front of the mansion before the sun rose, Ling Tian and Ling Tian were already standing there waiting for them. The first thing Ling Tian did was to scold them all ferociously. As they saw that Ling Tian had arrived before them, they were full of guilt and shame. A bunch of fully grown men actually had a poorer sense of time than a child. Following which, it was the first day of Ling Tian's test. Ling Tian commanded them to run from the gates of the Ling mansion to the newly developing Ling family courtyard, pluck a branch from the willow forest, before returning. Ling Tian did not give them a specific time to meet. He only pushed Ling Tian into their crowd and instructed that the one who reached there last will have to carry Ling Tian back. As for Ling Tian's training, it was half of the blood iron warriors. He was only required to run to the willow forest. Furthermore, those who came in the last 10 places will have to wash the clothes of the first 10 who came back and have their meals reduced and given to those from the first 10 places. For a day, those from the first 10 places can instruct those from the last 10 places to do anything. Ling Tian then reminded them while there is no time limit, he will have a final time limit in his heart. If they were to exceed it, they would all have to scram. As everyone heard that, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. Without knowing the time limit which their young noble set for them, how would they be able to pace themselves? Furthermore, it was at least 40 miles from the Ling mansion to the Ling family courtyard. The to and fro journey would be a total of 80 miles for them. By the time they were to finish the run, they would definitely be completely exhausted. 1. After Ling Tian finished giving out instructions, he turned back into the mansion. He only said that they were not allowed to resort to any tricks. If they felt that it was unreasonable, they can leave at any time. If they were still going to be in a daze, they should go back home to be in a daze. The moment Ling Tian said that, they all sprinted towards the streets. As Ling Tian looked at their backs, he could not help but shake his head as he thought, a bunch of unruly mob. I can't believe they do not know how to run in step even though they are from the army. If they were to adjust their footsteps to be in unison, it would make all of their lives much easier. It is obvious that the army did not train them in such an area. This is also good, they will now have to endure it with their own body fitness. With regards to the time given for them to return, Ling Tian had set it to 4 hours. This was something that Ling Tian felt was a relaxed timing for the special forces from his previous life. While Ling Tian had never been a soldier or been in an army camp in his previous life, He was not a stranger to military training. Being born in an aristocratic family, even if he was not a main descendant, he had to have a certain understanding of the army as well. Surprisingly, the physical fitness of these men were extraordinarily good. They were all able to return within Ling Tian's stipulated timing. The fastest person who came back was actually an hour earlier than his stipulated timing. As the last person returned, the sun was already up high in the sky. As they all returned to where Ling Tian stayed, they all sat down and panted heavily with perspiration all over their bodies. As for the last person who returned, who was also the person who carried Ling Tian, his tongue was already sticking out from his mouth. Ling Tian then walked out from his room calmly. As he saw how pathetic they looked, he frowned and roared, "This is also called elites? Elites who look like dead dogs? Stand up and line up properly. The first 10, take a step forward." Then, 10 people including Feng Mo took a step forward emotionlessly. These 10 people were all standing up straight with their breaths smoother than the rest. They all formed a row in front of Ling Tian, with delight on their faces. Ling Tian carefully studied all of them before nodding slowly. The last 10, take a step forward. Then, 10 people stepped out with their heads lowered in embarrassment, panting heavily. Especially the last man who returned, he stood up with great difficulty, almost falling back down to the ground before standing up with great difficulty. If they had ran at a uniformed pace, they would definitely not be in such a poor condition. They were only afraid that they would be eliminated by Ling Tian if they were late. Thus, they were running at full speed even up to the end. With an enormous pressure and the exhaustion of their bodies, they were reduced to such a state. Ling Tian then nodded and revealed for a warm smile, "You guys, good. Very good. Cool down your bodies for a while. Before you guys recover, you are not allowed to drink anything." This was from Ling Tian's experience in the previous world. He knew that if they were to drink water when they were so exhausted, it would greatly reduce the effects of training. Drinking water after their bodies recovered from the exhaustion would be the best way to maximize their training. He then turned to look at the first 10 with a chilly gaze. "As for the 10 of you, you guys are really fast." Hearing the unfriendly tone in Ling Tian's voice, these 10 blood iron warriors felt that something was wrong. They were all extremely puzzled. "We all came back with the fastest speed, exceeding the rest by a great margin. Why does it seem that young noble is extremely displeased?" Ling Tian then looked at them coldly and said, "From today on, the clothes of the last 10 people will be washed by all of you. All of their jobs apart from training will also be done by the 10 of you. Your lunch will be reduced by half." As Ling Tian said that, everyone was dumbfounded. Many of them were tempted to shout out, "What kind of a logic is this?" Not only did they have no rewards for coming back early, they were even punished? Everyone was completely at a loss. The first 10 who came back were also in shock, with even a trace of anger. Finally, a burly man walked out and shouted, "Young noble, I am unresigned." "Oh?" Ling Tian turned and looked at him with strictness in his eyes. "What are you unresigned about?" The man then replied, "We are faster than the rest of them by an hour. Such a result far exceeds those from the last 10 places. Why are we the ones getting punished instead of them? Don't tell me it is wrong for us to listen to young noble's orders to run back as fast as we can?" As he said that, all 10 of them revealed a face of being wronged. Ling Tian then slowly nodded as he asked the rest, "Do the rest of you feel this way also?" The other 9 of them looked at him and nodded. Ling Tian then laughed coldly, "Good. I will let you guys understand. But after I explain it to all of you, all of your punishments must be doubled." The 10 of them then replied in unison, "As long as young noble is able to tell us where we went wrong. If we are really in the wrong, we are willing to be punished." Ling Tian then snorted, "Do you know why I want you guys? I want a team. I do not want individuals. While you guys are fast and managed to meet my required timing, you guys abandoned your comrades. abandoned your brothers. You guys know that they are exhausted already but did not help them out. Can I ask, if such a thing were to happen on the battlefield, what will your crimes be? You dare to say that you are wronged in front of me? Are you guys really wronged? Chapter 66, Strict Training. After hearing what Ling Tian said, they were all stunned. The 10 of them then could not help but lower their heads in guilt. The burly man then knelt down and shouted, reporting to young noble, "We are wrong. We are willing to accept the punishment. We will not have any complaints." With a HMPH, Ling Tian said, "You guys have to remember that you are a whole body, life and death brothers. In the cruel battlefield, these brothers will be the ones to watch your back. Without them, there will be no purpose for your existence as well. Such an action of yours today is no different from the despicable actions of abandoning your brothers in the battlefield for your survival. Furthermore, he is already the last one and have to carry a child. You guys actually ignore him like that? Where are all of your consciences? Where is the brotherhood? If he were to really die from exhaustion today, how would you guys feel? Will you guys feel guilt? What I want is not individuals. I want a team. Being born in chaotic times, it is inevitable for men to go into the battlefield. If you guys were to roam the pugilistic world, it is sufficient for your individual bravery. But in a battlefield, if all of you do not know how to work together, if all of you do not know how to take care of each other, there will only be a single outcome: a cold corpse. When you are with me, no matter if it is a test or training, everything must be treated as a real battle. You guys must recognize that it is a battlefield deep in your hearts. At any time, you guys may die. No slip-ups can be tolerated. Although what I saw may be a little exaggerated, I hope that you guys will understand." The strict voice resounded in the small yard. While it is in the bitter winter, everyone was filled with perspiration all over. They were scolded by Ling Tian to the point they did not dare to lift up their heads. The moment Ling Tian scolded them, it made them all feel that their actions were improper and unacceptable. Ling Tian then turned and looked at the last 10 people. With a chilly tone, he scolded, "As for you guys did not live up to expectations and dragged your brothers down to be punished. If this were a battlefield, you will have caused the lives of your brothers. Now, the 10 of you will be punished as well. Are you guys convinced?" All 10 of them knelt down and replied, "We are totally convinced." Only then did Ling Tian's voice become warmer. "All of you must remember, my brother's life is my life. A team will only be able to display its full strength if it is complete. If everyone only thinks about running for their lives, it will be inevitable for all of you to perish even if you were all top-notch experts." At this moment, Ling Tian had already brought Ling Jian and Ling Chen back into the room. All of the Blood Iron warriors were still seated on the floor in a daze, thinking about what Ling Tian said. They then began to feel that Ling Tian made more and more sense. This was the golden principle in the battlefield. They all could not help but think, if a large army were to follow such a principle, then will there be anyone who will be able to stop such an army? For such an army to face the various troops of the different empires, wouldn't it be just child's play? At that moment, the ambitions in their heart began to grow. They all thought, with young noble's intellect, can it be that he only trained us for fun? He definitely has a great ambition. In a day, Ling Tian commanded the 36 of them to do the horse stand, frog jumps, duck walk, sit-ups and planking. In any case, Ling Tian had used all the methods of training from his previous life. Ling Tian frowned with a whip in his hand, mimicking a strict military instructor from his previous life. However, he was far stricter than them. From time to time, he would walk around to monitor all of them. The moment he realized that someone's actions were wrong, he would lightly whip them. While there was no pain, it would definitely result in the others laughing. As for the Blood Iron warrior who was whipped, he would then plunge back into training with his face reddened. While the postures which Ling Tian commanded them to do looked extremely strange in the eyes of the Blood Iron warriors, every action would cause them unbearable pain. As the Blood Iron warriors first started the training, they were initially extremely unwilling and even complained frequently. They thought that this young noble of theirs was just coming up with ways to torture them. What use will these weird actions have? Why not we all just lift up rocks in order to train our strength? But as they trained gradually, they were all shocked to realize that these actions were capable of training every muscles on their bodies. Such a training was something which they had never even heard before. They all could not help but think that their combat prowess would definitely be increased to a higher level if they were to continue with this training. In that moment, they all felt that this young noble of theirs was becoming increasingly mysterious. The moment they had such a discovery, they trained voluntarily instead of needing Ling Tian to monitor them. As Ling Tian saw the surprising fitness of the Blood Iron warriors, he nodded his head in secret. If they were to continue training as such, it would complete their physical fitness training in half a month, being able to endure his training regime. At that time, the real training would begin. In a day, the 36 Blood Iron warriors felt that they had a great reward. But at the same time, they were all extremely exhausted. After dinner, Ling Tian instructed them to repeat the whole process of training again before announcing that it was the end of training. Everyone then heaved a sigh of relief as they collapsed on the floor. Even Feng Mo, who was the fittest, also had his fours on the ground, panting heavily. He only felt that every part of his body was incomparably painful. As he was panting, he began to joke. After a day of young noblesse training, I feel like I have just went to seen Hades and taken a tour around the 18 levels of hell. As everyone heard that, they all nodded their heads weakly. They all agreed. Now, the way they looked at Ling Tian was no longer the disdain they once had. It had already transformed into respect from the depths of their hearts. Not only was Ling Tian able to shatter rocks, his training method was extremely effective as well. Furthermore, it was also because of Ling Tian's theory of brotherhood on the battlefield. Such a saying was completely unheard of in their generation. As they thought about it carefully, this was definitely a golden principle. Something which was irrefutable. As Ling Tian looked at their pitiful appearances, he could not help but say coldly, "You guys already think that this is the 18 levels of hell? Let me tell all of you something. If you want to become strong, this is only the beginning. It is just the most basic exercises only. From now on, you guys will understand what is called the real hell." He. Everyone all took in a breath of cold air. This is only called the beginning? They all could not help but feel a sense of helplessness. They were all already completely breathless with their muscles aching all over, and it was merely the beginning. Ling Tian then laughed out loud and walked out. Before he left a single phrase, "We will continue tomorrow. Everything will be like today." In the room, a bunch of men who saw blood in the battlefield and would not blink in the face of a blade all began to sigh and complain. But, that action of theirs strained their muscles as they all let out voices of agony. Chapter 67, Ling Qian's Request. Half a month quickly passed, and the 36 Blood Iron warriors were obviously much fitter than before. Even Ling Tian, who ran along with them, was also obviously much fitter. Furthermore, Ling Tian's performance in these few days had also made the Blood Iron warriors change their perspective of him. With Ling Tian's original fitness, much less 80 miles, even 40 miles was extremely difficult to achieve. In the first day of training, Ling Tian had already fainted from exhaustion before running halfway. A Blood Iron warrior then carried him on his shoulder to run a distance. But after Ling Tian woke up, he insisted on running on his own. In the end, he kicked and bit just so he can run on his own. But after running for a short while, he had fainted again. In this half a month, the Blood Iron warriors had seen Ling Tian faint many times. However, the nerves of this young man was like steel. He would faint silently. After waking up, he would then silently continue to run. The Blood Iron warriors were all trained by the long years of battle. As long as their stamina could keep up, their legs would definitely keep up. But Ling Tian was different. He was only a 8-year-old child after all. The muscles on his body were still extremely tender. On the first day, his feet had a large amount of blisters from running, with some of them being ruptured and bloody already. Even the Blood Iron warriors who tended to those injuries could not help but frown as they saw it. This unyielding young man still appeared in the second day's training. He still fainted, had new blisters, ruptured them. At the start, all the Blood Iron warriors were extremely displeased with Ling Tian for throwing a child in their midst, as it was an obvious burden. But in the end, this contempt had transformed into admiration from their hearts. From the start to the end, even if Ling Tian were to faint or have his feet bloodied from ruptured blisters, he did not even groan once. He did not cry once. He would only slowly chase after the footsteps of the rest, never admitting defeat. Until the end, an amazing thing happened. When some of the Blood Iron warriors wanted to skive off because of fatigue, they would feel guilt when they see Ling Tian's frail body. This ended up in increasing the speed of training greatly. In the morning, the sun had just rose. Ling Tian was seated in front of the stone table in his own yard. His hands supported his head as though he was thinking about something. Even the youngest Blood Iron warrior was already over the age of 20. They were far past the age most suitable for practicing martial arts. It would be an extremely arduous task to get them to cultivate inner strength. Only after eliminating many martial arts did Ling Tian finally find external martial arts to strengthen their bodies from his memory. He was then prepared to impart it to the Blood Iron warriors. Since they are going to fight with him in the future, then their strengths must definitely be increased as well. With regards to the martial skills to be taught to the Blood Iron warriors, Ling Tian felt a great headache. These fellows basically do not have any basics at all. Everything they know are the moves which they learn from instinct. Ling Tian thought carefully about this matter. If he were to teach them a martial skill suitable for killing large amount of enemies in the battlefield, they would definitely suffer a loss if they were to fight in the pugilistic world. If he were to teach them two different martial skills, these fools would probably not be able to learn it well. Just when he was in deep thought, footsteps sounded from behind him. Then, a thick sweater was placed on his body. Following which, a gentle tone of concern sounded, "Young noble, be careful not to catch a cold." Ling Tian then smiled gently and turned behind. A beautiful lady appeared in front of him with thin lips, a sharp nose and two large eyes. From the depths of the eyes, a human figure could be seen with no stain or dirt within it. This girl was Ling Chen. Ever since Ling Tian brought her back and fed her well, her cheeks grew rosy and her body much fitter. Ling Tian smiled and could not help but hold Ling Chen's hands. "Chener, why are you up so early? You have not recovered fully yet and should rest more." Ling Chen looked down and bashfully as she looked at the hands holding on to hers. With respect in her tone, she said, "Chener, can't he be at ease if young noble is here alone? It's cold." Ling Tian then brushed away her messy fringe and said gently, "My body is strong, it won't matter. Quickly go back and catch some more sleep, it is still early." In truth, Ling Tian was actually 1 to 2 years younger than Ling Chen. But every time Ling Tian saw this pitiful young lady, he would always want to dote on her and comfort her like a senior. Ling Chen then bit her lips and hesitated for a moment. After a while, she finally mustered her courage and said, "Young noble, can you let Ling Chen train with Ling Tian and the rest as well in future?" Ling Tian could not help but be taken aback as he asked, "Why do you have such a thought?" Ling Tian lowered her head and mumbled, "I know that young noble is training them to do things for you. Chener also wants to help young noble. Can young noble agree, please?" Ling Tian then laughed and said, "Chener, practicing martial arts is extremely exhausting. I am afraid you won't be able to endure it." Ling Chen then lifted up her head stubbornly. With resolution in her eyes, she said, since Ling Jian is able to endure, Chen will also be able to do so. Chen isn't he afraid of bitterness? As long as Chen can help young noble, Chen will be willing to do anything. Ling Tian laughed and pinched her cheek. Good, good, good. Then I will make an exception for Chen. Let me think. What kind of martial arts should I teach Chen? With elation, Chen said, young noble must teach Chen the most powerful martial arts. Chen wants to beat Ling Jian. Ling Tian lost himself in laughter for a moment before saying, good, I will make you stronger than Ling Jian. But, Chen, the moment you start, there will be no turning back. I do not like people to give up halfway. Ling Chen then said resolutely, rest assured, young noble. Chen will be even more hardworking than Ling Jian. Ling Tian laughed for a moment as he quickly thought about what he should teach Ling Chen. My own divine shocking dragon formula isn't suitable for girls, that definitely isn't viable. As for the golden iron jacket, that's even more impossible. Which martial arts is suitable for a lady? Then the only one which is suitable for a lady would be the divine ice formula which Ling Zu'er cultivates. Thinking about Ling Zu'er, Ling Tian became lost in a daze for a moment as he felt a wave of heartache. Only after a while did he say, Chen, come over. Let me feel your bones. Ling Chen responded with a before moving in front of Ling Tian. What is meant by bone feeling is an important procedure of the ancient sects before accepting a new disciple. It was to test the talent of a person to see if one was suitable for the sect's martial arts. As an example, some would be born with a lack of coordination in their bodies. The actions which others could easily accomplish would be extremely difficult for them to achieve in perfection. This is not something which could be made up for by hard work. This was a problem with one's innate talent. Just like how in the present-day sports scene in China, gymnastics would be a sport which would require a person to be extremely flexible and nimble. Most of the athletes which are able to get the gold medal would be those who come from the south. As for those from the north, it was rare to see any of them who will be able to compete at the international level. This does not mean that those from the north aren't hard-working or lesser than those from the south. This was something which has got to do with talent and is largely affected by the environment which one grows up on. The south was extremely humid while the north was much more dry. Those from the north and south would be easily distinguished just based on looks alone. The adaptability of those from the south was much stronger than those from the north, with their skins being much softer. Those from the north would be much fitter and well-built than those from the south. Geography, weather, diet and many other things are contributing factors to these. Thus, for the sports with a great demand towards physical strength, those from the north would excel much better in. The topic strayed too far away, back to the point. Ling Tian shut his eyes as his hands roamed around Ling Chen's body. In his palms, his inner chi would observe every part of Ling Chen's bones as his hands moved past that portion. As he slowly observed her body, Ling Tian was surprised that this young lady's talent was much higher than what he expected. In fact, it was no less than Ling Jian's. If Ling Tian were to guide her carefully, she will definitely be a frightening existence in the future. As he thought about these things, Ling Tian could not help but enter into a daze, not hearing the footsteps by the entrance of his yard. A sharp scream could be heard from the entrance. The scream was filled with disbelief and shock. Ling Tian was startled. As he turned to take a look, he saw a few people by the entrance to his yard. Ling Zhou, Chu Ting-er, Ling Kong and Son, with Ling Ran by the side as well. Ling Ran had her hands over her mouth as she stared at Ling Tian with an incredulous expression. All of the others had their mouths opened up wide as they stared at Ling Tian and Ling Chen. At this moment, Ling Tian and Ling Chen's actions just looked too loving from the view of an outsider. Ling Tian was holding Ling Chen tightly in his embrace as his hands were exploring Ling Chen's body. His eyes were shut as though he was enjoying himself. As for Ling Chen, Her face was red with her body leaning in Ling Tian's embrace. Chapter 68, Bone-Touching Incident. Vile beast. What are you doing? A loud roar resounded. Ling Zhou's face was ashen as his eyes were wide as saucers, looking as though he wanted to eat Ling Tian up alive. If such a scene were to happen on a 15 or 16-year-old teen, while it would be shocking, it wouldn't be strange. After all, that was the time where puberty was taking place, and it was understandable if there were uncontrollable urges. But now that this happened on a 6-year-old child, it was far too strange. Chu Ting'er was also filled with shock as she just could not believe what she saw. She stared at her son for a long while without blinking. Although Ling Ran was the one who let out the shriek, she was the first to recover from the shock as well. She then looked at Ling Tian with an expression filled with both laughter and anger, almost unable to control her laughter from bursting out. Ling Kong and Sun had their mouths opened up wide as though their jaws were dislocated. The two palace maid behind Ling Ran was filled with laughter in their eyes. They had long heard about the reputation of this young master of the Ling family. They also heard that he caught the fragrance bag during the one-year-old catch event. Everyone had guessed that he would definitely grow up to become a playboy in future. But, they never imagined that when he was merely 5, he would begin his playboy journeys. Their eyes then drifted to Ling Zhou and Chu Ting'er, praising them for the wonderful son they brought up. Ling Ran finally burst out into laughter as she looked towards her brother and brother-in-law teasingly while sizing them up. Her meaning was obvious. If not for the fact that the both of you were always seen by him when he was young, would he have done something like this at such a young age? Everyone else had the same thoughts in their hearts as they all turned to look at Ling Zhou and Chu Ting'er with a teasing look. In shock, Chu Ting'er felt that her brain was completely malfunctioning. By the time she reacted, she saw everyone looking at her with those teasing looks and immediately understood what everyone meant. Her pale face then turned red as her neck gradually turned red as well. She then stomped her feet in embarrassment, frustration and anger. Following which, she wanted to raise her hand out to punch Ling Zhou's waist. However, she never expected that she only managed to pinch the air. When she looked up at Ling Zhou, he had already turned into a gust of wind. Without a second word, he had already grabbed Ling Tian's legs and hoisted him up into the air, slapping his little butt. Pack 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 pack. The sounds of slapping sounded as Ling Zhou scolded, "Let me beat this little animal to death. You vile creature who ruined the name of the family." Only then did Ling Chen snap out from shock as she knelt down and pleaded, "Old master, young noble was only helping me touch my bone. Old master, please don't beat him." Ling Chen was still young, and did not know why Ling Zhou grabbed Ling Tian to beat him the moment he entered. Just what mistake did the young noble make? Bone touching? As everyone heard that, his eyes and mouth were as wide as saucers. Bone touching? Why is there a need to touch bones? This is something that had never happened in history before. The reason this young noble used to harass his own maid is really unexpected. Ling Zhou was angered to the point his voice turned hoarse as he began to beat Ling Tian even harder. Ling Tian then shouted out, "Father, listen to my explanation." Ling Zhou grit his teeth as he shouted, "Explanation my ass." His hands did not stop as he continued to slap Ling Tian. Ling Tian did not dare to use his inner chi to protect his butt, afraid that it would injure his father from the recoil. His butt was already filled with pain at this moment. The moment he heard what Ling Zhou said, he scolded in anger, "Old man, can you be more reasonable?" "Old man." Ling Zhou's voice trembled in anger, "Unfilial son. Vile beast. Animal. $%. In rage, he began to curse with fluent profanities. Chu Ting'er and Ling Ran came forward to persuade Ling Zhou, but were shoved aside by him. As Chu Ting'er saw her son's butt have traces of blood, her heart ached as tears rolled down her face uncontrollably. Just when things were getting heated, The sounds of footsteps sounded from afar as a few burly men ran in. Their bodies were filled with sweat, with steam rising from their heads and a face full of fatigue. As Chu Ting-er saw that the one leading the pack was Feng Mo, she seemed to have saw her savior as she shouted, "Feng Mo, quickly separate the both of them." As Feng Mo and gang ran all the way back, they were extremely exhausted. However, they never imagined such an exciting event to unfold right when they stepped into Ling Tian's yard. At that moment, they could not be bothered with their heavy breaths as they watched the show by the side. All of the Blood Iron warriors had the same idea, folding their arms by the side as they watched Ling Tian get his ass beaten. They all pretended that they could not hear the pleas of young madam. In the past half a month, Ling Tian had been increasing the difficulty of their training every day, tiring the bunch of them to death. During the peak of exhaustion, they were not even able to climb onto their beds to sleep at night. Everyone had already cried bitterly in the hearts for these few days. But now that they saw this little devil being carried by his father and beaten up looking extremely pathetic, they all felt extremely ecstatic. The fatigue which they suffered from the past half a month was swept away as they thought to themselves, young noble can even crush a large rock into pieces. How is it possible for the general's frail beating to affect him? Just hit him a few more times, it wouldn't matter. In any case, this is a rare sight to be seen and we should take the opportunity to enjoy it while we can. As the time passed, more and more people returned, until over 20 of them were back. They laughed at Ling Tian's misery, with some of them even cheering, "General, use more strength." Wah ha ha ha. Ling Tian was furious, and could not be bothered with the fact that he is still in his father's hands as he shouted, "Tomorrow morning, 160 miles." All of the Blood Iron warriors trembled for a moment. Before Ling Tian finished what he had to say, they all charged forward, fighting to separate the father and son pair. Before the Blood Iron warriors came to the Ling family, they were subordinates of Ling Zhou. They all knew that this general of theirs was extremely strict during military training. But when it was their free time, he would be like brothers with his troops, getting along extremely well. Thus, they were not afraid of him as they quickly saved Ling Tian from his hands. However, who knows whether it was an accident or not, but the person who saved Ling Tian accidentally slipped. Ling Tian was dropped right to the floor, with his butt accurately landing on the floor. "AHHH. My %and $, and a roar resounded in the yard, filling it with profanities.